Okay, we're back. Welcome to part 3 of CSS Grid. Divide the grid into an area template. You can group cells of your grid together into an area and give the area a custom name. Do this by using grid template areas on the container like this. Grid template areas. Here we have header, 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 advert, content, content, footer, footer, footer. So here are grids being split up into the top 3 are headers, the bottom 3 are footers. We have an advertisement right here at 4, and then 5 and 5 are content. So the code above merges the top 3 cells together into a header, the bottom 3 cells into a footer, and then the 2 in the middle, as I just said. Every word in the code represents a cell, and every pair of quotation marks a row. So you put each row in quotes, and every word is a column, which would be when you have a row and a column, you have a cell. So this is a specific cell. In addition to custom labels, you can use a period to designate an empty cell in the grid. So if I change this to a period, that would mean the middle one is empty. But let's not do that. So replace the template so advert is empty. So they want to do this. So it's an empty cell, but it's still displaying. After creating, but it's being designated as an empty cell. After creating an areas template for your grid container as shown in the previous challenge, you can place... Is my mic working, by the way? Let me just make sure. Let me investigate the mic really quickly. It's working, okay. We're good. After creating an areas template for your grid container as shown in the previous challenge, you can place an item in your custom area by referencing the name you gave it. To do this, you use the grid area property on an item like this. So you use, for item 5, we're using grid area. Place an element with the item 5 class in footer using the grid area property. So now 5 is in footer. So because we defined the footer as this entire area here, now when we put 5 in footer, it now occupies the entire footer. If I do the area null, it's going to be there. If I do the area content, it'll be those two. If I do header, pull up there. But if I do the dot, it won't go where the dot is. So there's a reason for that we'll look at later. So there we go. The grid area property you learned in the last challenge can be used in another way. If your grid doesn't have an areas template to reference, you can create an area on the fly for an item to be placed like this. Item grid area 1/1/2/4. So using the line numbers we learned about earlier, this is what these numbers correspond to. So the grid area a horizontal line to start at, vertical line to start at, and then end, end. So you do start, start, end, end. So here we want to start at 3 and 1 and go to 4 and 4. So that's already doing that. It's already going from 3 to 4 and 1 to 4. So that's already happening. Let's just change it to 2 to 4. So that's what that would do. When you used grid template columns and grid template rows to define the structure of a grid, you entered a value for each row or column you created. Let's say you want a grid with 100 rows of the same height, it isn't very practical to insert 100 values individually. Fortunately, there's a better way. Using the repeat function to specify the number of times you want your column or row to be repeated, followed by a comma and the value you want to repeat. Here's an example that would create the 100 row grid, each row at 50 pixels tall. So grid template rows, repeat 100 times 50 pixels each. So you can also use the column repeat function, or you can use a repeat function for the columns, which would be 2 columns, 1 FR 50 pixels. So this will translate to you're making 2 of these 2 column things. So now you're repeating this twice. So you have 5 columns total. So you can define a bunch of different widths here, and it will repeat that over and over again. So you're repeating 1 and 50 twice. So 1 and 50, 150, 150. So you're doing it 2 times. And then you have a final 20 pixel row at the end. So there, as it says here. So use repeat to remove repetition from the grid template's column property. So we're going to change this to repeat 1 FR, or 3 1 FR. So now we have 3 columns that are 1 FR apart each, or 1 FR wide. And if we go here and we go to what is FR in CSS, it's called the flexible unit. The FR unit is a fractional unit, and 1 FR is 1 part of the available space. So yeah, as we said earlier, I forgot what it was. Okay. So it's a third, a third, a third. So there is another built-in function to use with grid template columns and grid template rows called MiniMax, or MinMax. It's used to limit the size of items when the grid container changes size. To do this, you need to specify the acceptable size range for your item. Here's an example. Grid template columns, 100 pixels, min-max 50 to 100. In the code above, grid template column is set to 2 columns. First is 100 pixels wide, and second has a minimum width of 50 pixels and the maximum width of 100 pixels. So now it has a min and a max that it can be. So it will never be smaller than 50, never be larger than 200. Using the min-max function, replace the 1 FR in the repeat function with a column size that has the minimum width of 90 pixels and the maximum width of 1 FR, and resize the preview panel to see the effect. So we're going to use the min-max. So we're replacing a 1 FR in this with a min-max. Of 90 pixels and maximum 1 FR. So you can nest functions together like that. The repeat function comes with an option called autofill. This allows you to automatically insert as many rows or columns of your desired size as possible depending on the size of the container. You can create flexible layouts when combining autofill with min-max. In the preview, grid template columns is set to repeat autofill min-max 60 pixels 1 FR. When the container changes sizes, the setup keeps inserting 60 pixel columns and stretching them until it can insert another one. Note, if your container can't fit all your items as one row, it will move them down to a new one. In the first grid, we're going to use autofill with repeat to fill the grid with columns that have a minimum width of 60 and a maximum 1 FR. So it appears it's already written there. in the first grid. We have 2 grids now. Okay. Use autofill. So I'm going to use autofill. With the dash between. So now we're automatically filling this up. So we're not doing a number thing. We're automatically filling it with between the min and the max, and it seems to be doing the min, which is 60. But if we do if we stretch it, it'll dynamically change like this. Because it's going between the min and the max. You can see it stretching. Like when it reaches the maximum, it's gonna stretch. It's pretty cool. So thank you for watching episode 3 of CSS Grid. Hope you enjoyed that. You can follow me on social media below. Check out the Patreon, and if you want private tutoring or any web dev work done, you can email me below. Thank you.